everyone. Thank you all so much for being on with us today. We're looking forward to an awesome webinar. My name is Amanda Leach. I'm the Assistant Director for Career Networking Programs here at JMU. I'm a proud 2009 and 2015 grad of the university. Today's webinar is brought to you by the JMU Alumni Association. We're excited to bring you this alumni webinar program with the goal of providing career-related resources to help you develop your professional self. We have alumni participating from all over the world, and I want to say thank you for participating. Your feedback means a lot to us. You will receive a follow-up survey after the webinar. Take the time to give us feedback so we can improve this great program. Introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. If you are participating live, please know that your microphones are muted. This for the sake of the presenter. There are two chat options, the Q&A and the chat. If you want to ask a specific question that requires follow-up, please use the Q&A feature. If you want to respond to the presenter's feedback, it will be a fairly interactive session, and we want your feedback throughout. During those times, please use the chat feature. We'd love you to tweet during this event using the hashtag JMUAAwebinar and then @MauraFredericks. You can see both of those hashtags and Twitter handles on the screen. The webinar will be recorded and can be accessed online on our website and will be emailed out to everyone who registered for the webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce Maura Fredericks. Maura is a skilled business consultant and credentialed leadership coach with a no-nonsense yet caring approach. Prior to launching Thrive in 2013, Maura spent 25 years working across multiple industries. She has a keen understanding of how business works and organizations function. Her strong management and leadership background includes positions with Starwood Hotels and Resorts, LabCorp, Carfax, BB&T, and Insperity in a variety of roles involving consulting, sales, and customer service. Dedicated to helping co-founders, business owners, and company leaders create action plans for lasting change, more clients discover how to realize their business visions in ways that create highly functioning environments that thrive. One of Maura's specialties is facilitating entrepreneur accountability groups. In these groups, 4 to 6 entrepreneurs focus much-needed attention on their own business development by setting and meeting specific goals. For 90 minutes each month, away from the stress of the everyday, these owners connect and share best practices, new ideas, and perspectives that catapult their success. Master's degree in Education and Human Resource Development from the George Washington University and holds the Associate Certified Coach designation from the International Coach Federation. Maura, thank you so much for being on with us today.
For the opportunity. I'm so glad to be with you today. And hello and welcome to my fellow JMU colleagues. I'm Fredericks, formerly Maura Geary, a 1989 graduate of the School of Business with a concentration in hospitality management. While I actually was a transferee into JMU, I was a member of the Tri-Sig sorority. I had a work-study program in the admissions office for 3 years and made hundreds of sandwiches at JM's Pub and Deli. And I probably made sandwiches for some of you on the webinar today. I live in with my husband and our 6-year-old Labradoodle, Ruby, who was actually at a dog sitter today so we could have some quiet and peace on the webinar. It's my experience that has led me to where I am today, having the best time of my career doing my best work with some of the best clients ever. I like to say this is my 5th and final career after starting off my career in the hospitality industry upon graduating from JMU. I started the housekeeping department of a 400-room hotel in Washington, D.C. with the kind of boss I feel like everybody should start their careers with. A British favorite phrase was straight away to every guest. Nonsense with an obvious sense of urgency, giving us lots of freedom to make mistakes and who always had your back with lots of support to grow. After the years there, I actually moved into sales because I was afraid of it. I didn't think I could do it. After 6 years in sales, I moved into a data company. I was hired to start a department that didn't exist, and that was with a company called Carfax. After there, I moved into the legal profession for 7 years. I was a paralegal in 3 different environments, a law firm, a government contractor, and at a nonprofit. I had to take a pause, and I worked with a career coach for about 4 months and moved into a master's program with the discipline called organizational development. And one course in that 2-year program called executive coaching that just changed everything for me. I enrolled in a coach training program upon completion of that master's program and became an organizational development consultant working with small businesses. And after completing that coach training program, I became a credentialed coach and started my business Thrive. Today, there's owners and company leaders helping them affect change and grow businesses. A slide so you could have seen my path there. And as you read those, I'd like to talk a little bit into the objectives. So as a business consultant and coach, it's based on communication, helping my clients find options and choices where they think they have none. And experience, they feel this way because they're all wrapped up in their stories. But we are not our story. So you today is how mastering separating emotion from fact in your business and in your lives. So the bits of this, you'll have less stress in your business and in your lives. You can reduce conflict, increase productivity, and also make better decisions. And do this is becoming self-aware of language that we use and also understanding the purpose of our conversation. Today's webinar is to remind us of really what we already know, with emphasis on the how to talk to, listen, and relate to each other for meaningful and successful businesses and lives. So it's an opportunity to discuss options and choices and to start communicating differently. You'll have which ideas today resonate with you and best for you and your business. I'm not a big quote person. However, in today's presentation, I'd love to give you the 2 quotes I know and use. Here's the first from Mark Twain. The secret getting ahead is getting started. Let's dive in. Webinar, I would like to celebrate with you the commitments you decide to make to yourself and your business based on information you hear today. What will you be interested in doing differently? So this poll here, I'm really curious. Let's go to the chat feature and take a quick poll. Share the results with all of you and record your response. If you record your responses to the host and the presenter. We'll have questions, post those, and we'll have time for questions at the end too. So to stick to the facts when you ride high in a conversation. Succumb to your emotions when you communicate. If you just share your responses, that would be great. So responses. Okay, so let me just share some of these responses. We have emotions, depends on the situation. Emotion, it depends. Between emotions and both. So let's go on. So I'd like to story with you about one of my clients. This client wrote to me, friend of business and a letter. They were 2 years in business, however, they were 20-year lifelong friends. There was some tension between them, and there was some confusion among their employees. So I moved to the founders and immediately observed some circular patterns of sending and withdrawing between the partners, but all that with some willingness of the partners to acknowledge their strengths. Coaching meetings continued. I observed mounting mistrust and judgment and criticism. As their coach, we began working with the process for each partners to listen, to clarify, and to walk each other through their observations so they get to the big picture. Learn to refrain from judging each other, from noticing each other, and by that I mean by deciding for each other what their motives were, and to reduce making assumptions about each other. And to consider two questions while I wasn't with them and as they worked through the day-to-day operations of their business. Were ways that undermined their best interests and ways that were not in the best interest of their business. Making some progress until one co-founder sent the other a email. Not together day by day, but the letter came in the mail. Full of emotion. Came to a standstill, and Christmas came, the holidays. Story as we move along. Of today's webinar, 3 tips on how to separate emotion from fact. I'm going to read through these all at once, and then we're going to dive into each one separately. Number one, observations, evaluations. 2, distinguish feelings from thoughts. And use specificity in lieu of extreme language. Selections versus evaluations. Observations, you're stating facts. Evaluations is when we're adding in judgments and assumptions. To me, it's just making judgments and assumptions. That inflames emotions on the part of the other person. Your concept. So right now, what I'd like to do is introduce a concept that illustrates an evaluation that you may be familiar with. Some of you may have heard of attribution error. Like this. When I show you I have a good explanation by my external situation. I'm finding a reason up to a defect on your part, your lack of skill, something like that. So it cites emotions on your part because I'm only using my facts in situations. Evaluation. Examples of observation and evaluation in practice. What I want to do here is, taking observations, all I want to do is state the concrete actions that are in you, and you focus on the behavior, not the person. So an option is, James Lay, that's a fact. Observations are facts. Evaluations truly are emotion injected in fact. James always late. There is facts is the observation, the emotion is the observation, the evaluation. The feelings versus thoughts. This graphic really represented this very well. When we're talking about feelings versus thoughts, we have to reel back to the dictionary. We have to go back to the definition of the language that we're using. The words we choose are so important to our success in life and business, and what we say has such a big impact on happiness. Words power and can change our patterns of thinking. So what is the definition of a feeling? What's the definition of a thought? Feelings are we? Are we using the right words in the right situation? What's your emotional vocabulary like? How expansive is it? many of us don't have a strong grasp of this. Exactly what I mean. We're conjuring and making up stories about what others are feeling. Is this a good time to bring up some kind of news that might not be all that pleasant? Feelings are powerful determinants of what people decide to do and what not to do. So that separating feelings from thought is about use the words feel and think. Words, I feel that, and we don't follow with an actual feeling, we contribute to heightening the emotions of the other person. So here's be cautious when using I feel and when I think is more accurate. I feel better. I feel that know better isn't a feeling. I feel that you are attacking me unfairly. I feel that you are attacking isn't a feeling. So talking about feeling, the other person is expecting something that represents a feeling. And we're not that. That incites the emotions. When really you're saying, I think that you should know better. That's a much more neutral conversation. It's a much more neutral statement. Another would be, I feel like an idiot. What feeling? I'd be better if you would. Well, as if it would be better isn't a feeling. So it's a subtle difference, but powerful when you got it and how better a conversation could go. Another to separate emotion from fact is to just drop the word feeling entirely when you are in fact describing a feeling. I'm just instead I am feeling sad. To learn the difference between how to interpret the actions of others versus how you truly are feeling. When you hurt versus you feel someone is treating you, I feel dismissed. That's an evaluation. Subtle thing. When we go back to the picture of the dictionary, as a thought, I feel sad versus I feel dismissed. How interpreting what someone else is saying. The other person may not be dismissing you at all, but that's and interpreting what somebody else might be doing to you. I'm going to go back to something else here to say. Aren't being clearly expressed when they're followed by certain words. Words like that or as, pronouns. I feel you being towards me. You isn't a feeling. What I call power words. Instead of saying things like I feel you or I feel that, something I use in my business and that I also worked with my client on that I can refer you to in just a minute is and will and committed or how. These are ongoing action and forward movement and that represent connections. Example, getting back to my clients, when I mentioned that I heard a lot of circular patterns of defending and withdrawing, the specific words used between the two partners, for example, were when connecting were. For example, when one of the partners said to the other, why do you think it was a good idea to go behind my back to our investors? Well, it was loaded with tons of assumptions. It was an evaluation, and it put the other partner on the defensive and not willing to participate in that conversation. But a pattern such as sentence, why do you think it was a good idea to go behind my back? And this way, to me, how you came to the decision to contact our investors on the matter. Well, geez, that's a conversation. The situation there. It was the part did go to the investors with talking to the partner first. That was a fact. So I, for a how, out of that question, and partner who did investors behind the back willing to explain and share what was going on. Now, I'm not saying in the heat of the moment that's an easy question to come up with. But that's to recommitting to a new way of communicating, become a new purpose for connecting, and choose our words carefully if we want a different outcome. Feeling, when we really mean thinking, it makes our story bigger and increases the chances of contributing to the failure to connect. Tips I use with my clients for how you can begin to you can begin to become more aware of your language and how to separate that feeling from emotion. One, observer. So listen is complete. Write down you remember that was said by each person. And this can be conversation anytime. Get into the habit of reflecting on your words, your word choices. You start becoming more conscious and practicing the language you're using. And then to journal, especially after a difficult conversation. What you feel, what you felt you did well, and what you feel you could do better next time. It's you in that space of being more aware of, again, the words that you use, how you're feeling, and what the reactions are of the other person. Is being specific and using extreme language. Getting experience, asking as many questions as you need to find common ground is the basis of this tip here. Concept, I came across this years ago. I was homesick one day, and I was flipping through the TV, and there was Dr. Phil. And this family about the dysfunctional language conversations they were having. And it goes something like this. All, ever, completely, none. I was talking about something like parents were telling the children, you never clean your room. You always bring home bad grades. The kids were saying to the parents, you never listen to me. Not good enough for you. It's just this cycle of misunderstandings and hurt feelings, and guess what? Really high emotions. And so it really, really intrigued me, and it's something that I started to research, and it's just something that we unconsciously and subconsciously use in our language all the time. And so I started to take notice about how I use extreme language. And started listening for where this extreme language was in this as well. And it happens where I go all the time. It's all. So it's more accurate and avoid extreme language is by use accurate and precise language as you can, because of peaceful resolution. And really, words trigger particular emotions. It's getting deeper and asking those clarifying questions. This feeling vocabulary, and aside, I put some resources together for you at the end of the presentation, and this is one of them. Dictionary slide what is vocabulary around how we're truly feeling? So some words, and again, this URL is there for all of you. We're feeling angry. Are you really feeling angry? Is there another way to more accurately and precisely describe how you're feeling? So hopefully you to be able to further the conversations and find words that are agreeable to you is to really figure out what's going on. Perhaps reduce the emotion and stick to the facts. So for example, are you feeling sad, or are you just really feeling low? And what does low mean? So how can you come to some common ground and come in agreement as to what the words mean? Let's go back to the chat if we can. About facts versus emotions. Out of the 3 tips so far, what's resonating with you? Which one do you think you can leave the webinar today with and say, that's something that sounds like I can start doing today. That's something I can commit to today for help me reduce the emotion and help me stick to the facts. I'm curious. Yeah. To enter. And thank you. I see here some comments that we're going to address in just a couple of minutes. When emotions are high, it's hard to find objective facts. That's so true. And that's why practice is really, really important. And we'll address that before we wrap up the webinar. Using for a feeling, and hopefully that vocabulary list will be helpful as well. So much. So in a conversation, the speaker and the listener role. So who is responsible for what? What really happens, right, when emotion and fact are right, the role is confused. So in an ideal world, the speaker's role is to explicitly communicate, and the listener's role is to listen. But separating emotion from fact, there is merely communicating, and there's listening and interpreting. So they're very subtle, but it makes a big, massive difference, right? The speaker's role is to explicitly communicate and the listen. But when emotions are running high and facts are being confused there, the listener's taking on more responsibility than the speaker. So how around that? Let's clients. Let's review. Partners, 20 years of friendship, support through babies, through divorces, through death of parents, successes of starting a business, through trials and tribulations of difficult clients. One, the other letter filled with judgment, emotions, and little facts. The very next, a second letter of a different sort arrived. Finished. A bit closed. Can we emotion from fact? We've talked about some tips. Here's just a couple of more. Focus on the body. Take a deep. So when we're told of the speaker and the listener, active listen, demonstrating, paraphrase back. When those words are used and the speaker is not being clear and the interpreting, ask fine questions. The way for you today is that you do have options and choices around your conversations. So you respond or take time to process. You can questions are running high and you can engage in the heat of the moment, or you let your own bias towards your emotions, and your emotional experiences influence how you give and receive communication. You can start practicing to separate emotion from fact. Here are some ideas. One I work with in my business that my clients really seem to like, and I hope works for you, and answer some of the questions that came across the chat. And Steve, I see your question here too. We'll get to that in a minute. And with coach, role play conversation that you plan to have. This takes time, it takes practice. So please script it out. From your facial expressions, your tone, your body language, the specific words you want to use, even the sequence of your words. Script until it's exactly the way you want it. And first. And then be aware in the conversation. Or are you speaking explicitly? As your conversation, can you put yourself in the listener? Are you asking them to listen or interpret? Clarifying questions. Questions that work well. You can ask your listener when you have a conversation. These are questions that you can ask yourself. How to separate emotion from fact? You can plan ahead. What conversation? What yourself? What are you about the situation that's true? Helping you or hurting you? That's one of the questions that I ask my clients to consider. To be different. We've been words and patterns of speech for the longest time. Nothing about this information, even though it's stuff we know, to change. But it can, and it's all incremental steps. in the concept of feel and think. He has always learned that a person has the right to their feelings. Very true. For a speaker to comment on another's feelings or want to change them as a person needs permission to engage them. So I think really what I'm trying to say here is, if I understand your question, Steve, and I'm address it exactly to your satisfaction, please let's talk offline. Every feelings. The thing here is that the person's feelings, are we hearing them the right way? A person who is conveying their feelings in a way that's productive to the conversation. Come to the chat, please, make sure that I'm getting this right. What emotions, in fact, we have to remember that everybody has their own perspective, and when going back to the attribution concept, are we our own facts, or are we coming with the facts of the situation? Are we attributing to the other person really coming from them? Or are we lens? Important to try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, ask the clarifying questions. And interesting, I was reading something yesterday that talked about when we're having trouble in a conversation around a subject, we feel like we're going in circles. The most important thing to move forward is to really just make sure that the other person feels heard. Make sure that they feel heard. And once you can achieve that, it's easier to get to the place where you need to go. I'm addressing your comment and your question. Please let me know if I am or if I'm not. And perhaps I have for you today. My wish for you is that you found some actionable information here today that you can commit to just your conversations, your businesses, and your lives. Of resources for you. These are 3 books well worth the effort to take a look at. Nonviolent Communication, A Language for Life, Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most, and In the Pursuit of Leadership Excellence. This is a second book by Chalmers Brothers. His first book was Language in the Pursuit of, now it's escaping me. He has a second book, it's Language in the, I thought Language Pursuit of Language, that might not be right. But this is a second book. It's really, really, really meaty and talks about a 3-step process around leadership communication. How here's help as well. What's the difference between feelings and emotions? And the websites that are really great. The vocabulary list actually came from this university, Ryan University, but the vocabulary list in a PDF form is where I obtained this. List, if you have something to share, please don't be shy in forwarding it to me. Of the webinar that I live by 2 quotes, so here's the second. My message. I need to share my message with you today. And I'm curious about your message. I'd love to learn more about you. So please. Information. Let's turn back to Amanda for questions.
More so much. I feel like I've learned a lot, and as I mentioned when we ran through this information, it's so simple, but it makes a huge impact, and it's information that we don't regularly talk about. I think that's one of the things that I think is so fascinating about this topic, and the sort of separation there. We do confuse it a lot. One question that I had was, do you see this think versus feel dynamic coming into play a lot when you're dealing with men versus women? I get the sense, and kind of from my own personal experience, that I tend to lean toward I feel, whereas I know some other folks in my life, predominantly men, who would say more I think. And I'm not saying that there's a gender difference there, but are you finding that happens?
Actually, I don't. My business clients are 50-50 men and women, and it's interesting that as I pay attention to this pretty intensely, that there's just as many men out there that use the word feel, and most of the time it's dealt by a feeling. Whereas for the women who say I feel, what I've noticed is that the next word is more often a feeling than men. So the difference isn't think versus feel. What I noticed is the word after the feel for women is more often a feeling than men.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we had another question come in from Danielle. Sometimes language is not always what we say. Are there any suggestions for facial emotions and body language?
What question is it how to condemn, how to, can you help Danielle?
See. I'm wondering, any suggestions for seeing your nonverbals, being able to control them, essentially, so that if you know you're feeling kind of this extreme emotion, how are you making sure that that's not coming across in your nonverbals? So if I got that right, Danielle, you might have to correct me. Yes, how to control them.
Yes.
Using, let's say, a poker face.
Yeah.
Being fake.
Exactly. I'm actually known in my circles for having this look, which we've not even aware of. So I say two things. One is, as to in fact giving these signals off. And if you are, for all of this information today, it is practice. First of all, is what you want to do. If you don't want to convey these things, it's being aware of in what situations are you most likely to not show your emotions. And number two is what's the harm, being aware of what's the harm in showing the emotion, because it's not bad in some situations not to share. And thirdly is it's practice. It's so, for example, if you're sitting across from your boss and they're giving you bad news, and when I get angry, I tend to cry. And it's like, okay, how can I maintain my composure? So one that works 9 times out of 10 is practicing just deep breathing. Sit back in your chair, sitting up straight, and just practicing concentrating on what the person is saying, not what's happening inside of you. So a trick that works is to focus off how you're feeling and focusing on the words that are being said.
That's and if anyone else has additional questions, please feel free to either send them to the chat, send them to the Q&A. We have a few more minutes here with Maura. And if we don't get any additional questions in, that's fine, and we can wrap up here shortly. But I did want to give everyone a chance to send any additional questions in before we wrap up. Maura, any parting words for us?
I just say that hopefully there's something here to take away. And again, this is about choosing to do something different, choosing to pay attention to the words that you use. And again, this is not easy stuff, and practice makes perfect. So just give yourself a break. If you're interested in trying any of these tips, find an accountability partner, find someone to practice with, and good luck. Oh, here's a couple things. Can you finish the story of your client? Were you able to significantly impact the outcome of the story through your services? So they went to court, and this is no longer. So in that respect, to impact the outcome, not on the partnership. I will say that one of the partners is still one of my clients, and I'm working with her in particular as she transitions out of that difficult relationship and as she's starting a new business. So one of the things that coaches do is their work from the outcome, because there really was nothing that I could do about that, but I was very happy to retain and to be able to support one of the partners through a difficult time. So, Amy, thank you so much for that question. And Amanda, when you say speaking explicitly, do you mean speaking with details? When I say speak explicitly, I am talking about being as specific as you can, being as accurate and precise. So if that means details, that's what I mean. So that's well.
Great. Any more questions? I'll go ahead and say, Maura, thank you so much for your time today. I think we've all learned quite a bit, and I think the challenge now will be going and putting everything into practice. I did just see the Q&A pop. That was a thank you from Danielle for your answer. All right. Thank you just so much for your time today. Again, putting this into practice will be the challenge that we all face come up, and so hopefully this is something we can all work on. Everyone who's participated today, thank you so much for your time. We hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, Ready, Set, Network, Build Your Career with the Help of Your Buddies, presented by Megan Ely on Tuesday, May 3rd at noon Eastern Standard Time. If anyone you know is interested in presenting, please contact me at leechad, that's LEECHAD @jmu.edu. More, thank you again. We're so grateful for your time. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you.